Hi guys. I know you're probably all going to laugh at me for doing this, but I thought reading is learning. I want you to read, and I thought possibly the easiest way of getting you to read is to read something to you. So you can click on this. I'm going to do a chapter a day. It's really easy. I've decided my first book that I'm going to do is Diary of a Young Girl. So Anne Frank, who was during World War II, she was a Jewish girl, and she hid in a house with her family. And this is her diary, so it's real. So we've kind of got a bit of non-fiction, but at the same time, she was trapped at a time. She couldn't go outside, and we're kind of in that situation ourselves at the moment. I remember reading this when I was your age and absolutely loved it. So I read chapter 1 of Diary of a Young Girl. Okay, so it says on the first page a little bit of information about Anne Frank. So she was born on the 12th of June 1929. She died while imprisoned at Bergen-Belsen, which is a concentration camp, 3 months short of her 16th birthday. Otto Frank, her father, was the only member of his immediate family to survive the Holocaust, and he died in 1980. And then he was the one who decided to have Anne's diary published. Okay, so it says there's a foreword, so that's kind of giving us a little bit of information. You'll find that in non-fiction texts. Anne Frank kept a diary from 12th of June 1942 to the 1st of August 1944, so just over 2 years. Initially, she wrote it strictly for herself. Then one day in 1944, Gerrit Bolkestein, a member of the Dutch government in exile, announced in a radio broadcast from London that after the war, he hoped to collect eyewitness accounts of the suffering of the Dutch people under the German occupation, which could be made available to the public. As an example, he specifically mentioned letters and diaries. Impressed by his speech, Anne Frank decided that when the war was over, she would publish a book based on her diary. She began rewriting and editing her diary, improving on the text, omitting passages she didn't think were interesting enough and adding others from memory. At the same time, she kept up her original diary. The last entry in Anne's diary is dated the 1st of August 1944. On the 4th of August 1944, the 8 people hiding in the secret annex were arrested. Miep Gies and Bep Voskjul, the 2 secretaries working in the building, found Anne's diary strewn all over the floor. Miep Gies took them away in a desk drawer for safekeeping. After the war, when it became clear that Anne was dead, she gave the diaries unread to Anne's father, Otto Frank. After long deliberation, Otto Frank decided to fulfill his daughter's wish and publish her diary. He selected material from both versions and edited it into a shorter version, and this is the Diary of a Young Girl. When he made his choice, Otto Frank had to bear several things in mind. To begin with, the book had to be short so that it could fit in with a series put out by the Dutch publisher. In addition, several passages dealing with Anne's sexuality were omitted, so that means not put in. At the time of the diary's initial publication in 1947, it was not customary to write openly about sex, and certainly not in books for young adults. Out of respect for the dead, Otto Frank also omitted a number of unflattering passages about his wife and other members of the secret annex. Anne Frank, who was 13 when she began her diary and 15 when she was forced to stop, wrote without reserve about her likes and dislikes. So basically, her father decided to leave out bits that maybe she was being quite honest about how she felt about her mum or about sex, or if she was quite critical of the people she was staying with. So he did that out of respect for the other people. So if you see, this is Anne's actual writing, and it's translated. I hope I will be able to confide everything to you, as I have never been able to confide in anyone, and I hope you'll be a great source of comfort and support. Okay, right, we'll get started. So, 12th of June 1942. So far, you truly have been a great source of comfort to me, and so has Kitty, whom I now write to regularly. This way of keeping a diary is much nicer, and I can hardly wait for those moments when I'm able to write in you. Oh, I'm so glad I brought you along. So she actually named her diary Kitty and kind of had it as almost like a friend she was talking to. Sunday the 14th of June 1942. I'll begin from the moment I got you, the moment I saw you lying on the table among my other birthday presents. I went along when you were bought, but that doesn't count. On Friday, the 12th of June, I was awake at 6 o'clock, which isn't surprising since it was my birthday. But I'm not allowed to get up at that hour, so I had to control my curiosity until 7:15. When I couldn't wait any longer, I went to the dining room where Morch, the cat, welcomed me by rubbing against my legs. A little after 7, I went to Daddy and Mummy, and then to the living room to open my presents, and you were the first thing I saw, maybe one of my nicest presents. Then a bouquet of roses, some peonies, and a potted plant. From Daddy and Mummy, I got a blue blouse, a game, a bottle of grape juice, which to my mind tastes a bit like wine. After all, wine is made from grapes. A puzzle, a jar of cold cream, 250 guilders, and a gift token for 2 books. I got another book as well, Camera Obscura, but Margot already has it, so I exchanged mine for something else. A plate of homemade biscuits, which I made myself, of course, since I've become quite an expert at making biscuits. Lots of sweets and a strawberry tart from Mother. And a letter from Grammy, right on time, but of course that was just a coincidence. Then Hannah came to pick me up and we went to school. During break, I handed out biscuits to my teachers in my class, and then it was time to get back to work. I didn't arrive home until 5, since I went to the gym with the rest of the class. I'm not allowed to take part because my shoulders and hips tend to get dislocated. As it was my birthday, I could decide which game my classmates would play, and I chose volleyball. Afterwards, they all danced around me in a circle and sang happy birthday. When I got home, San Lederman was already there. Ilse Wagner, Hannelie Goslar, and Jacqueline van Marsen came home with me after gym, since we're in the same class. Hannelie and San used to be my 2 best friends. People who saw us together used to say, "There goes Anne, Han, and San." I only met Jacqueline van Marsen when I started at Jewish Lyceum, and now she's my best friend. Ilse is Hannelie's best friend, and San goes to another school and has friends there. They gave me a beautiful book, Dutch Sagas and Legends, but they gave me volume 2 by mistake, so I exchanged 2 other books for volume 1. Aunt Helene bought me a puzzle, Aunt Stephanie a darling brooch, and Aunt Lenny a terrific book, Daisy Goes to the Mountains. This morning I lay in the bath thinking how wonderful it'd be if I had a dog like Rin Tin Tin. I'd call him Rin Tin Tin too, and I'd take him to school with me, where he could stay in the caretaker's room, or by the bicycle racks when the weather was good. Monday the 15th of June, 1942. I had my birthday party on Sunday afternoon. The Rin Tin Tin film was a big hit with my classmates. I got 2 brooches, a bookmark and 2 books. I'll start by saying a few things about my school and my class, beginning with the other children. Betty Blumendahl looks rather poor, and I think she probably is. She lives on an obscure street in West Amsterdam, and none of us knows where it is. She does very well at school, but that's because she works so hard, not because she's clever. She's pretty quiet. Jacqueline van Marsen is supposedly my best friend, but I've never had a real friend. At first I thought Jack would be one, but I was badly mistaken. DQ is a very nervous girl who is always forgetting things, so the teachers keep giving her extra homework as punishment. She's very kind, especially to GZ. ES talks so much it isn't funny. She's always touching your hair or fiddling with your buttons, and when she asks you something, they say she can't stand me, but I don't care, because I don't like her much either. Henny Metz is a nice girl with a cheerful disposition, except she talks in a loud voice and is really childish when we're playing outside. Unfortunately, Henny has a girlfriend named Beppy, who's a bad influence on her because she's dirty and vulgar. JR, I could write a whole book about her. Jay is a detestable, sneaky, stuck-up, two-faced gossip who thinks that she's so grown up. She's really got Jack under her spell, and that's the same. Jay is easily offended, bursting into tears at the slightest thing, and to top it off is a terrible show-off. Miss J always has to be right. She's very rich and has a wardrobe full of the most adorable dresses that are much too old for her. She thinks she's gorgeous, but she's not. Jay and I can't stand each other. Ilse Wagner is a nice girl with a cheerful disposition, but she's extremely finicky and can spend hours moaning and groaning about something. Ilse likes me a lot. She's very clever, but lazy. Hannelie Goslar, or Lise as she's called at school, is a bit on the strange side. She's usually shy, outspoken at home but reserved with other people. She blabs whatever you tell her to her mother. But she says what she thinks, and lately I've come to appreciate her a great deal. Nanny van Prague Cigar is small, funny and sensible. I think she's nice. She's pretty clever. There isn't much else you can say about Nanny. Evie de Jong is, in my opinion, terrific. Though she's only 12, she's quite the lady. She treats me like a baby. She's also very helpful, and I like her. GZ is the prettiest in our class. She has a nice face, but is a bit stupid. I think they're going to hold her back here, but of course I haven't told her that. And sitting next to GZ is the last of us girls, us 12 girls, me. There's a lot to be said about the boys, or maybe not so much after all. Maurice Costa is one of my many admirers, but pretty much of a pest. Sally Springer is a filthy mind, and rumour has it that he's gone all the way. Still, I think he's terrific because he's very funny. Emil Bonwit is GZ's admirer, but she doesn't care. He's pretty boring. Rob Cohen used to be in love with me too, but I can't stand him anymore. He's an obnoxious, two-faced lying, snivelling little twit with an awfully high opinion of himself. Max van der Velde is a farm boy from Medemblik, but a decent sort, as Margot would say. Herman Koopman also has a filthy mind, just like Jopie de Beer, who's a terrible flirt and girl chaser. Leo Blom is Jopie de Beer's best friend, but has been spoiled by Jopie's dirty mind. Albert de Mesquita came from the Montessori school and jumped here. He's really clever. Leo Slager came from the same school but isn't as clever. Roos Doppelman is a short, goofy boy from Almelo who transferred to this school in the middle of the year. CN does whatever he's not supposed to. Jacques Cockanoot sits behind us next to C, and we, G and I, laugh ourselves stupid. Harry Schaap is the most decent boy in our class. He's nice. Werner Joseph is nice too, but all the changes taking place lately have made him too quiet, so he seems boring. Sam Solomon is one of the tough guys from the rough part of town, a real brat admirer. Appy Riem is pretty orthodox, but a brat too. Saturday the 20th of June, 1942. Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. Paper has more patience than people, I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed and was sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless, wondering whether to stay in or go out. I finally stayed where I was, brooding. Yes, paper does have more patience, and since I'm not planning to let anyone else read this stiff-backed notebook grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, probably won't make a difference. Now I'm back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Let me put it more clearly, since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world. And I'm not. I've got loving parents and a 16-year-old sister, and there are about 30 people I can call friends. I have a throng of admirers who can't keep their adoring eyes off me, and who sometimes have to resort to using a broken pocket mirror to try and catch a glimpse of me in the classroom. I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. No, on the surface I seem to have everything, except my one true friend. All I can think about when I'm with friends is having a good time. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary, everyday things. We don't seem to be able to get any closer, and that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide in each other. In any case, that's just how things are, and unfortunately they're not liable to change. This is why I've started the diary. To enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down all the facts in this diary the way most people would do, but I want the diary to be my friend, and I'm going to call this friend Kitty. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty if I were to plunge right in, I'd better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I'd dislike doing so. My father, the most adorable father I've ever seen, didn't marry my mother until he was 36 and she was 25. My sister Margot was born in Frankfurt am Main in Germany in 1926. I was born on the 12th of June 1929. I lived in Frankfurt until I was 4. Because we were Jewish, my father emigrated to Holland in 1933 when he became the managing director of the Dutch Opecht company, which manufactures products used in making jam. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank, went with him to Holland in September, while Margot and I were sent to Aachen to stay with our grandmother. Margot went to Holland in December and I followed in February, where I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margot. I started right away at the Montessori nursery school. I stayed there until I was six, at which time I started in the first form. In the sixth form, my teacher was Mrs. Cooperus, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell because I'd been accepted at the Jewish Lyceum, where Margot also went to school. Our lives were not without anxiety since our relatives in Germany were suffering under Hitler's anti-Jewish laws. After the pogroms in 1938, my 2 uncles, my mother's brothers, fled Germany, finding safe refuge in North America. My elderly grandmother came to live with us. She was 73 years old at the time. After May 1940, the good times were few and far between. First there was the war, then the capitulation, and then the arrival of the Germans, which is when trouble started for the Jews. Our freedom was severely restricted by a series of anti-Jewish decrees. Jews were required to wear a yellow star. Jews were required to turn in their bicycles. Jews were forbidden to use trams. Jews were forbidden to ride in cars, even their own. Jews were required to do their shopping between 3 and 5 p.m. Jews were required to frequent only Jewish-owned barbershops and beauty salons. Jews were forbidden to be out on the streets between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. Jews were forbidden to go to theatres, cinemas, and any other forms of entertainment. Jews were forbidden to use swimming pools, tennis courts, hockey fields, or any other athletic fields. Jews were forbidden to go rowing. Jews were forbidden to take part in any athletic activity in public. Jews were forbidden to sit in their gardens or those of their friends after 8 p.m. Jews were forbidden to visit Christians in their homes. Jews were required to attend Jewish schools, etc. You couldn't do this and you couldn't do that, but life went on. Jack always said to me, I don't dare do anything anymore because I'm afraid it's not allowed. In the summer of 1941, Grandma fell ill and had to have an operation, so my birthday passed with little celebration. In the summer of 1940, we didn't do much for my birthday either, since the fighting had just ended in Holland. Grandma died in January 1942. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the others, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. The four of us are still doing well, and that brings me to the present date of the 20th of June 1942 and the solemn dedication of my diary. Okay, so that's the first couple of entries. Hope you enjoyed it. Some things that you might want to look up. So Anne talked about the pogroms, which happened. So they were kind of where Jewish people were persecuted before the war. So whenever we think about World War II, we think, everything that happened with Hitler, and it kind of just happened within the years of the war, whereas it was building up for a long time, and kind of these restrictions, as she's talked about, were put onto Jews before the war began. So you might want to research that. And I hope you watch my next video where I'll carry on with some more of her diary entries. Bye.